Welcome to this week's episode of Tech Talk. I'm your host, Michael Amargana, and with us, as per usual, is our co-host, Vicquell.
Hello.
This week, we're going to touch on something that's a little bit more controversial. Not like we haven't done that in the past. We're going to be talking about something called dark patterns. Essentially, it's these psychological, almost warfare kind of things that are happening within tech companies, and essentially their methods and ways of allowing you, or guiding you is probably the better way to put it, to give them permission to use more of your information. I think I got that right, Vicky?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like they're sneakingly doing it.
And this is coming at a time where things are getting really hectic when it comes to privacy, mainly because one, we just recently had the Facebook thing, and more information is even coming out about that. Quite literally, we just last week found out. Thank you, Tyler Dreyer, for hosting. We just recently found out that they were also giving out information to 52 other tech companies, and sharing up your information with that. And then they just recently had an issue where over, I think it was 800,000 people who were blocked became unblocked and were able to then message you and try to add you as friends again on Facebook. Well, at least that affected like 800,000 users and their block lists, I guess you could say.
Maybe why strange people's been adding me on Facebook.
How many people have you been blocking, Vicky?
I usually don't block much people, but like I've noticed like this pattern where like persons I know I already have on my Facebook, all of a sudden they added me on Facebook again. But I usually don't block people. I'm a good noodle. I get literally just started happening, I think this week, where like I started seeing the pattern with all these random persons who I know I already have on my Facebook were adding me again.
I am very wary when it comes to stuff like that, because typically I find that it's someone impersonating another person.
Yeah, me too. That's usually what I think.
Like the account is. Sorry, go on.
I just like that them sit there.
Yeah. From what I've noticed, they kind of like make the accounts within just a few days ago or whatnot. There was one that consistently changed its name and its profile picture, and it would jump between being a black woman, a white male, a Chinese person. Thanks. Oh my gosh. And like it was crazy when you really think about it. It was actually kind of crazy as to what all they were doing with that. And hapless nective, thanks for following. If I got that name wrong, I apologize. I have a feeling I screwed that up royally. But getting back to it, Facebook has already had its own problems. Like I think we've already highlighted that a little bit. And then not only just a few days ago, quite literally, the developers are admitting that they like make these social networking sites to become like crack cocaine. Like they're meant to become addictive. And this is really and truly like seen in China, like the way how they have WeChat and like the way how they formulated their social media structure over there. Quite literally, you are almost always on one app.
Yes.
You're either messaging your friends, watching videos, shopping, quite literally, and everything then takes you to another thing that you could do on that same app. So I think that's what Facebook is trying to become for the Western side of the world, since we already have that for China and the Eastern side. And I'm noticing they're like taking more and more little things, like they're adding in the videos, they're adding in the games, they're adding in like buying stuff and gifting stuff and this, that, and the next. And now you can even buy stuff on Instagram now. So it's kind of becoming like, just what are you trying to do? And then,
So true. Like now on
see?
Instagram, like when I follow certain company, I like many converts, and like I could be scrolling and I'd be able to like they have like the thing where you can just tap it and it's like send you directly to their website to purchase stuff.
Yep. This is
Nothing
how
on
they get
Instagram
you.
that much.
Hey, Eclipse viewer, welcome back. And thanks. Yeah. But yeah, like this is something that is just it's a little funky for me. I'm not sure I really like it, the way how they're going through with this kind of stuff. But I mean, what can you do, right?
Yep. I feel it's gonna happen eventually.
Essentially. Which is not really the best. But again, what can you do? You're literally going up against these big companies. And then that kind of leads us. I'm glad you're able to join the stream. But that leads us to the next and to the overall point about dark patterns. And I'm gonna change up how we structure our view for the stream right now. I'm gonna slide this up here. So this is a almost 40-page report, and we're not gonna read everything out. But I'm showing you guys this report that was done, and they essentially focused on 3 major companies: Facebook, Google, and Windows 10, aka Microsoft. And
I wonder why Apple isn't there.
do you really want the people who leaked and stored people's credit card information without mentioning that to anyone until they got found out and then was like, oops, our bad?
This is putting that out there. They weren't one of the key 3 companies. So
What exactly are you getting at, Vicky?
and they pointing fingers at a specific 3 companies.
Well, they okay.
Nah.
See, here's page number 3, I think it is. Yeah, 3 out of 44. In this report, we analyze a sample of settings in Facebook, Google, and Windows 10. They then say, hold on, where is it? They know they had a reason here as to why they picked these particular companies. Facebook, Google, and Microsoft were chosen as examples as they are some of the world's largest digital service providers.
Exactly. The world's largest, so therefore they point fingers at them.
Oh, this is true. Although the examples used in this report are probably not unique to these 3 service providers, they serve to illustrate the problematic aspects that consumers face when using digital services.
That was a little disclaimer, but I'm pretty sure when people look at that, they saw, like, if the persons who didn't read it, they're just gonna automatically see Facebook, Google, Windows, and jump to conclusion.
Fair enough. Hey, Rinko, thanks for hosting. Okay, so getting into this, they use these 3, and you can see it right above us, right up there. That these are actually the way how they design the interfaces are meant to manipulate people. And some people will say, like, this is how you build stuff so that you get the best interactions from it. And I want you to keep that trend of thought on one side of your brain, and I want you to keep the trend of thought that privacy is essentially being manipulated away from you on the other side as we go through this report.
What's happening? Is it okay? Is it working? I'll do it on my end. It's on your end.
Wait, what? What's working? What's not working?
Oh, we had like a little jump on my end. I thought it
Oh.
was you jumping up.
Okay, so essentially the findings included privacy intrusive default settings, misleading words, giving users an illusion of control, hiding away privacy-friendly choices, take it or leave it choices, essentially choices that say, you either accept this or you don't use our services. And choice architectures where choosing the privacy-friendly options requires the most effort for users. And we're going to get into that last one a little bit later on. So, for the most part, they're saying that things like Facebook and Google actually have, by default, privacy intrusive settings. And so you'd actually have to go into the settings to change these things. And even then, they sometimes make it a little bit harder to do so. For example, they say where users who want the privacy-friendly option have to go through a significantly longer process. They even obscure some things of these settings so that the user cannot know that the more privacy-intrusive option was pre-selected. So overall, they found that Windows 10 was actually a little bit better than the others, but still it wasn't all that great. But we're going to jump down into this company that's actually doing this research. And it's actually the Norwegian Customer Council, which is an interest organization for consumers. And so it's kind of non-biased in what they're doing. They're not hired by any particular company. They're not working for anyone. They don't have set prejudice against someone. They're just trying to find these kind of information. And part of what they do there is to promote consumer rights such as privacy, security, and balanced contracts in digital products and services. Which they say that, they've published reports on mobile apps failing to respect consumer rights and how connected devices such as toys like basic security and privacy protective measures, and that this report is actually just a part of it, of the overall grand scheme of things. We already went over it. And if you're aware of something called the GDPR, which is a fairly new legislative set in place by the EU, or the European Union, then this is something that's kind of big because they're basing these privacy instructions based off of the GDPR, which pretty much means that anyone has the right to be forgotten, essentially. Everyone has the right to privacy if you're in the EU. And since these companies go across the world, they have to almost administer this across the board. Unless they want to target specific countries where the EU is. And even then, it gets tricky because you may, for example, live in, let's say you're a member, you're an actual citizen of the EU, but you live in the, or you're even visiting the United States. You decide to set up an account on Facebook. Even though you're in the US, because you're a citizen of the EU, you fall under their laws. And so Facebook, regardless of where you are, has to follow those same laws to provide you access or block you. Does that make sense? Or did I just kind of ramble on there for a little bit?
Makes some sense.
Okay, so we're going to jump through a lot of this. Essentially, what they're saying is that in the digital world, and this is kind of what a lot of people say, if something is free, essentially, then what's being sold is you and your information. And so that's essentially what this section right here is saying, free services often the accumulation of use and analysis of user information, and in many cases personal data, such as things like your political views, sexual preference, health data, your age, your interests, pretty much anything that they can get about what you do and what kind of things you're interested in, or you on a whole. So if it knows that you like buying purses, for example, it's going to then suggest and route you to buy more purses. If you like anime, if you like books, if you like to travel, it's going to try to tailor as much of this information and garner as much of this information to then tailor it further to use and sell. Maybe sell you something or sell your information to another company.
Company that will allow them to sell you what you're looking for.
Exactly. And that's why one thing I did like what Apple did during the WWDC event. Oh my gosh. And I found it a little weird because Adobe, and I mentioned it then inside our WWDC episode, but what happens is Adobe and a lot of other companies, they actually have a system set up where you can share information essentially across many different networks, many different sites about customers. And they like, let's say you go to a website that sells a bunch of stuff. Let's say you go to Amazon. Amazon, I don't think does this, but let's use them as an example. You go onto a bunch of stuff and it learns the different types of like items that you're interested in. Amazon does this for themselves, and that's why they'll email you saying, hey, well, these are things that you were recently kind of looking at. Here's some stuff that might be recommended.
Yep, and it's always on like the home page. I so hate
Exactly. It is annoying, especially if you're just looking for something for a friend and it's a one-off thing.
And now it's stuck on your account.
And there's no way to get rid of it. So that's I hate it. So yeah, essentially that's what they kind of do. But imagine a bunch of random sites that you may have visited sharing this information, selling this information to one another, so that when you go onto a completely new site, it's kind of tailoring. It's not even just an ad. They can quite literally change the entire appearance of the website to make you feel comfortable there. So I've seen an example before. So this person would have gone to a website and looked up surfing gear, essentially. They then go to another website which has a connection with the first website, and they quite literally changed the layout of the site to then say, like, with a picture of because it was a woman, they found out that it was a woman, they found out that it, the person likes to surf and stuff like that. They have a picture of a woman holding a surfboard on the beach as the like header image for that website, whereas the default one is like a family. So it actually tailors it just for you to manipulate you.
Besides it being manipulative and stalking and taking advantage of like your privacy on the internet, that's actually a really good marketing tool. So I'm to point that out there. But it's a good marketing tool, but just like invading your privacy.
It's a great marketing tool, but how ethical is it? That's the real question.
You may have some people be like, oh, I'm so glad that, they have like a woman up there holding a surfboard instead of being like a typical male, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take more interest in this website because, they seem to be more pushing towards different consumers instead of just like one gender. So you have those set of people that are just going to like sucker into it.
Yep. And that's one element that I'm not sure they really get into on this, but that's just giving you like an idea of what all these sites are doing. Now this report is a little different than that. Oh, and the reason why I like what Apple did is essentially they obscure all that information. So quite literally every MacBook, iPhone, so on and so forth will get the exact same thing. It's not going to have preferences or like try to show you if it knows you're a woman and you like something, a woman holding that same something. It's just going to give you default, whatever it is.
In other words, it just works.
I'm not sure that really fits there, but we'll go with it.
So this is like give you the default and it just works. Like Apple products, you just could plug it in and it just works. So therefore it's going to give you the default settings, so therefore it just works.
Well, comparatively, it would have just worked before regardless.
Yeah, but it would have worked with like a hidden back door that you didn't know about. Well, you would have known it. Well, some people know about it. They just sort of like, they can't do anything about it. And then you have the others who like don't know about it.
Yeah. So, actually, they do kind of talk about it here. Digital services monetizing data, high personal information, yeah, so on and so forth. Okay, so here's where it starts to get dicey. Essentially, this information puts the consumer at a disadvantage because they are poised to share personal information without having any viable way to know how this personal information can then be used to their detriment. Essentially, that manipulation to say, oh, well, I feel comfortable with this site, and so on and so forth. And it manipulates the person's thought pattern, which is why this is particularly called a dark pattern of the websites. And this is not just websites, this is tech on a whole. Could be apps, could be programs, could be websites, could be games, could be quite literally anything that you have a user interface with. Now, if we go into this, from the nudging to exploitation through dark patterns, they pretty much say that the concept of nudging comes from fields of behavioral economy. Hi there, Peter. Thanks for joining in. See you're on Periscope.
I said I'm still alive.
Well, I mean, it's there. But yeah, so what they're saying is that it describes how users can be led towards making certain choices by appealing to psychological biases. Pretty much what we talked about. And rather than making decisions based on rationality, it becomes more a cognitive bias without being aware of. So it becomes more of an emotion-based thing instead of logical. So, for example, individuals who have a tendency to choose smaller short-term rewards. They're saying that individuals on a whole tend to go for smaller chunks of rewards than, say, taking the time to really develop something and get a bigger reward. This is seen true to a lot of different things, everything from cloud computing to like Bitcoin mining, so on and so forth. And they're saying that the developers who are aware of these things can essentially use this to nudge you to make certain choices. So making a healthy alternative in a restaurant menu more prominent can nudge consumers towards making healthier eating choices. Just based on like, I think they actually have it here. Right. This can be done in various ways, such as obscuring the full. Thank you. Oh, Franklin. Thank you for subscribing on YouTube.
Hey, Franklin.
Vicky, you may have actually seen this one in real life. So obscuring the full price of a product, for example, and this can be even on a menu. Use confusing language or switching the placement of certain functions contrary to user expectations. This is essentially those high-priced restaurants that don't give you the price and just give you exactly.
And just give you the nice description and be like, oh, this sounds nice, and then you purchase it, and then when you get that check, you're like, whoa.
Exactly. That's why I think there's a phrase or term that's used. If you're worried about the price, you're probably not going to do well here. Or if you don't see the price, it's probably too expensive for you.
That's it. Yep.
Hey there, Lincoln Log. So, I mean, again, this is not just something that's based on tech. It's just tech is really using it. This has application in the real world. This is how marketers and whatnot try to get you into falling into these kind of traps. So essentially what it is, and it can be just placement of color, how things are worded, direct interventions such as putting pressure on users by stating that the product or service that they're looking for is about to be sold out, even if they have a good amount. This is where some places will also say, while supplies last, or limited stock, this and the next. Meanwhile, they know they've got like 2,000 of these things just
sitting. Some sites that have like a little countdown, be like, this offer ends in like X amount of hours, blah blah blah, putting pressure on you to purchase it, and like they know like they're about to run the same offer like next week.
Exactly. Or here's the thing. Do you remember those old commercials would be like, if you call now or within the
Now,
next 15
yes.
minutes, that's essentially dark patterns just on the TV. That's a form of marketing. And this is the thing that's becoming more prevalent now because of websites. And see, exactly, Lincoln sees it all the time. And this is a somewhat unethical thing because essentially, how are you supposed to know if you're running this, if you see this thing, how are you supposed to know that this isn't just something that you could just call in and just get at the time? How are they supposed to know the exact times when the things are actually being played?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you can select times generally, but the chances of it actually being at that exact time, that's probably going to cost you more money than good.
Yeah, like there's places that like you have totally different regions. So like if the offer is offered in like a place where I think it's Pacific time,
Mm-hmm.
or someone calling from Eastern Standard Time would be calling at a different time than the person at the Pacific time. So how do you guys? So therefore
Exactly.
the times would not up. Is that like
Exactly.
soccer people then?
Yep. So, how does this really work? And one other thing that they do is actually what they state right here. So while they do all of the above that we've already talked about, they do other things like pretty much bribing you essentially to give up your information. So, for example, they say that many digital services become particularly large because most users cannot accurately ascertain the risk of exposing their privacy. If a user is asked to trade their personal information for a short-term benefit, such as a discount, the actual cost of the trade-off is difficult to grasp. So again, you're getting the short-term reward and not looking at the long-term picture, which is your loss of privacy, which is kind of what we talked about when we first got into this particular section of this. This is pretty much just talking about the GDPR, essentially saying kind of what we talked about already. Now, one thing that I did want to point out is this part right here, which says that data protection by default requires that consumers should give a high level of data protection even if they do not actively opt out of the collection and processing of personal information. By default, services should only collect personal data that is necessary for provision of each specific purpose of the service, trying to meet the expectation of the data subject. So Google, for example, this report is saying that, since they have Maps, Search, Gmail, YouTube, Google Plus, and so on and so forth, it shouldn't use all the information as one collective. It should just split it off separately. I'm not so sure that really works out that well, but in a privacy-centric world, that would be the ideal thing. Me personally, though, I'm fine with giving Google that level of access to my privacy if it means I get better service. But then again, at the same time, I block all their ads. So, I'm not sure how really that works out for me. How do you feel about stuff like that, Vicky?
Well, I'm not a Google user. And Apple doesn't push me ads, so I don't have to block their ads. And Apple usually give me like pretty good, that I know of. They give me pretty good security, so I actually don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, but what do you use for search?
Bing.
So the Microsoft company that's also mentioned inside this
I actually
document.
don't use Bing. I use Google search.
I had a feeling since it took you a moment to actually remember what was the default. But regardless of pretty much almost any search engine, the main ones are going to be recording your information somewhere, somehow. Unless you're using something like DuckDuckGo. which is kind of one that,
Oh, no.
yeah. Remember things
Oh,
like
no.
Axe Jeeves and stuff like that? Like
Yes.
the old alternative websites for search engines. Actually, I think Axe Jeeves went down. When I think about it. At least I think so.
To
Oh,
request
wow.
my search on Google. Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind them like having some of my privacy. I don't mind them having some access to my privacy feature. Like once I have like a decent service, in which I really only use Google when I go to search. Like I don't have their phones, I don't have their products. So like I'm not constantly using their device. Well, yeah, their devices or their software, like how you use practically Google everything. Google
Hmm.
Books. Do you use Google Music? Or
I
do you
used
use
to.
or do you use Spotify
I use
now?
more Spotify now than anything.
Nah. So like yeah, like you like they have more like a like they could literally grab all your information and hold it there. Whereas for me, like all your information for everything, you use like the Play Store and everything. But for me, like they just grab my information from me searching using their search engine, and that's it.
Yeah. And now that you think about it, there's also Yahoo too. Technically, they're
Oh
still
yeah,
around.
yes.
Okay. So now we're actually getting into the what are these dark patterns exactly? Like, what are some examples of these things that they've been finding? So we talked about privacy by default, and they say that although many services that collect and process personal information provide users with privacy services, these settings are presented in many different ways, and that most will let users will never look at, let alone change the default settings. And this
Yep,
is true. Most
it's
people
true.
just download something, sign up, and go about their merry way. Like they don't really
Even
dig deep.
even like the little disclaimer thing, like no one reads that. Everybody just clicks OK.
Yep,
And like they're either gonna have like the okay and like a little blue, so they make sure like you ignore everything, just automatically click it.
exactly. And that's something else right there that we're gonna get into. Um, so it's there's so many different things. It's like it's a marketer's dream, but at the same time, it's a
It's a
privacy
consumer's
expert's
nightmare.
yes. And this is going to get them into a lot of trouble, especially with GDPR, because these things essentially are non GDPR compliant because they're making it difficult for the customer to get to their personal and privacy settings. So, on the terms of all of this, we're going to get into uh, what it is. So, the Facebook GDPR pop up requires users to go into Manage Data Settings and turn off ads based on data from third parties. If the user simply clicks Accept and Continue, the setting is automatically turned on, and it is not privacy by default because it's actually like nudging you to just click Accept. Because, hey, what did you just talk about? You talked about the big blue button that looks warm and inviting, and click me now, compared to the grayed out button, which says Manage Data Settings. So we have essentially one step, which is seeing the information, which is right up in here. Then we have the next step, which is either accept and continue or go in and change your stuff, which technically could have just been turn I do not allow and continue. Because it's not like they're saying you cannot use our service if you don't have this on. They quite literally say, this is just data from third parties. Do you want it on or off? But they make you go to another step, to another screen, to then say, do I want to allow it or not? I don't want to allow it, and then I have to click save. So essentially, they're making it more difficult for you to get to the settings to turn them off. Apparently, Google does similar things. So for example, the settings to store location history, device information, and voice and audio activity are turned off until the. Whoa, I'm hearing myself. Um,
Um,
Hmm.
hmm.
Did something change? Like, do you
I
not be
don't know.
playing or
I
something?
don't think I can hear it anymore.
Testing.
No,
Okay. No, I can't hear it anymore. So that's good. Um, so yeah, to store all this information are turned off until the user actively changes them and enables them. So that's that element. But when it comes to ad personalization, you actually have to go into the privacy dashboard to disable them. Thanks for telling me that, Bernard. Like, I'm glad that I'm not getting that echo anymore. And I think you're my first commenter on Mob Crush. Welcome.
what is that?
That's a new platform that we're streaming on.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, both Google and Facebook make it so that your privacy settings are actually disabled by default, um, or pre-selected to the least privacy-friendly options. At least so this is saying. Additionally, 30 minutes late is better than nothing at all. Welcome back, Juan. Both services do hide away and obscure pre-selected settings so that users who simply click the agree or accept buttons will never see the settings, and it is hard to know what is pre-selected. So quite literally, you could be allowing a bunch of stuff, not know, and instead of giving you, say, right above. So for example, on this Facebook one, they could have just simply allowed spaces to say, do I want to allow this, that, and that? And you'd be good. Like, they wouldn't have had this problem. It's called being transparent and not trying to make things harder for the consumer to protect themselves. So, the next example is the Google's GDPR pop-up, where the user must scroll through some screens of text. Among other things, it is noticed that users can opt out of seeing ads based on your interests, and you can choose to agree or click the edit settings button after scrolling. This is pretty much what it looks like. So essentially, the mobile version, both options are controlled by one button, which is on by default, but the web version, you actually have to go in and like turn on, like go into things, go another step, turn things on and off. Not that great. And they say here that it is impossible to tell if ads personalization across the web is turned on or off by default, because quite literally it has two buttons, both are yellow, says turn on and turn off. And I'll admit, that one's confusing. Like, to see the exact same button, like, shouldn't they have grayed one of them out or something?
Yes, they should have. Because like one is usually grayed out, like it's like a toggle.
Yeah, like that would make the most sense to me as a design thing. But I guess if they want to intentionally confuse you, then this is the way to go. So yeah, if that was the case, see more useful ads on YouTube and the 2+ million websites that partner with Google and show ads. Yeah, I can see where they wouldn't want people to really turn that off, because then that's revenue for them. That's really sketchy there, Google. That's really sketchy, man.
Your company.
Watch when they start focusing on Apple. You watch.
I shall wait to see.
Meanwhile, the mobile version quite literally is just a toggle, like what it should have been, and you can turn it on and off. And it tells you exactly when it's on and off. So it's not confusing. So I don't know why they just didn't do that with the like overall thing. Now, the next thing that they're talking about here is that, for example, with Facebook and user recognition, well, face recognition, if you want to turn it off, you actually have to go into the settings and actively turn it off. It's turned on by default, meaning it's learning your face by default. Which is not really that great, especially if you don't want your face all across everywhere. And
This is why I should know. This is why I have my camera covered, so they can't access my camera to see my face. But they can if like persons upload a lot of photos of themselves, they could actually use that to map out your face when they're in your face.
That is true too. And got him. We're looking at a report that was done by the NCC, essentially going over why social media and a lot of, even I should say, tech companies are trying to manipulate users with dark patterns, essentially that they use to manipulate you into giving up, or just giving up your privacy. Exactly, Juan. They have most things that regard to privacy that pretty much limit your level of privacy to default, meaning that you don't actually have all that much. And even with turning on face recognition, if you want to turn the setting on with using blah 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 blah, select accept if you just want to continue. But if you want to turn it off, you have to once again click manage data settings, and you have to go to the next step and turn it off there, and then click save. So it kind of hides it in a sense. Whereas Windows 10 requires that users actively click on a choice they prefer every step. There is no pre-selected choices, so in order to progress, the user must make an affirmative selection. So for example, you see everything right here and you click yes, or you see everything right here and you click no. There is no click here to then go into here and then see the settings and then save it. No, you make your choices and then it takes you to the next step. Like, that's essentially what they're saying the way forward should be with these kind of things. Which then goes into this next section, which is the ease of access. So we're going to skip over this. But I do want to point out this one thing right here. So for example, with Google's GDPR, it was when it pops up, it gives you a blue button to accept and continue to use the service, with alternatives requiring a click-through of a number of different submenus, or where it has other options. So it doesn't even really seem like a button. It seems more like text you can click on, maybe. And you're only really getting that feeling because generally on the web, blue text is a link.
Yeah, it's usually like a hyperlink.
Vicky, it seems you have another fan.
Oh, maybe? Oh.
Okay, smokiest. Let's calm that down right there. That's not appropriate.
My virgin eyes.
Yeah. Let's pull that right over there. Okay. So, let's see. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I can't really do anything with that. But anyway, let's move on. So again, the number of clicks equaled up for no as it is for yes with Windows 10, meaning that it is one of the better choices, but they do something that is a little not so kosher, which is when you actually take a look at choosing between different options. The option that gives the least amount of privacy has a light bulb that's turned on versus a light bulb that's dimmed out for those that doesn't give as much access into your life. So essentially it's saying like, this is the one you want, not this one. And the better way to do it is just to have, you know, no particular image saying like this is the better option.
You're just gonna have like certain things to accentuate what they're pointing you toward.
Yes,
basically.
exactly. So if we then take a look a little bit further on, they do something very similar as well when it comes to darts. Like for example, yes, apps can use advertising IDs to provide more personalized advertising in accordance to privacy policies of the app provider. That has a thrown dart hitting right in the center versus no, the number of ads you see won't change, but they may be less relevant to you. Doesn't have a dart on it. So it's kind of like saying again,
Oh
this is the one.
boy.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently, they're saying that Microsoft and Windows 10 has faced criticism for their data collection and use. However, these practices. Thank you for following Smokiest. However, these practices were not particularly apparent in the Windows 10 update that were analyzed for that report. Now, they do say that all of the services nudge users towards accepting data collection through a combination of positioning and visual cues. But Facebook and Google go further with a significant larger amount of steps in order to limit, especially since Windows 10, again, everything is equal. It's either yes or no, and you move on.
You know how much data they collecting from? Cause like most people have a PC. So I'm guessing like I feel like most of the world have a PC over and then over a Mac and Linux. I'm like, man, you know how much data that is they collecting?
Well, I would reckon to say that Apple does something very similar because I have a feeling that they have something inside their systems that tells them what kind of things people use, how often they use them. So it essentially tells them what they need to work on next. So in some ways, they're probably still tracking you that you're probably not aware of.
It's sad. And then
So
people usually complain and they don't listen to them until like years later.
exactly. So when it comes to Windows 10, yes, they do mention ads, and there are some ads here and there, and some stuff that like games and whatnot. Overall, though, I don't really see ads on Windows 10, so I don't really have to worry about that. Nor do I use Internet Edge or Internet Explorer, are most of their default like programs that you don't have to pay for.
But you
So
use a lot of Google programs.
that
I feel like your default browser is Google Chrome. Are you one of those people?
I am, yes. Meanwhile, you're
You're
probably
dodging. I'm Safari.
yeah,
You're dodging one bullet to hit the next.
yeah, essentially. But with Google Chrome, I am stopping tracking by using extensions, so that I'm less trackable.
Smart guy. The average Joe wouldn't have used an extension. There's to download Google Chrome, click, 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 and go with their business.
Exactly. And one, if you're worried about your passwords, do take a look at one of the password managers like 1Password, LastPass. There's a number of good ones out there. So you may have to pay a little bit to get some of the best features, but they generally have like a free option inside there somewhere. I know Intel bought a password manager company, which is the one that I used previously. But you can maybe store your passwords in those, and that can be accessed. Most of them can be accessed across your computer and your mobile phone as well. So you don't have to necessarily worry about your passwords all that much, or them being stolen. And it'll give you individualized passwords per website. And if you use 1Password, like we had mentioned in the last episode, not the interview 35.5, but actual episode 35, you would know that they actually built in something as well where if your password or your email address on a website is cracked and it's saved inside one of those, or even if it just knows your email address, then it'll let you know that, hey, you may want to change your password on this particular website. So that might help you with your password worries.
I know one. Actually, no, I know LastPass. If you continuously use the same password until you log in, they send you a little notification and say, "Oh, you should change your password. It's the same as this, that, blah, blah, blah."
That's actually the one that I use, LastPass.
Oh, LastPass.
Yep,
I use Keychain.
of course.
So if I get hacked, then I'm getting hacked.
It's just coming. One of these days, it's gonna happen.
I said on my cards linked, so that's probably the reason why I'm kind of okay. So I don't have any of my cards linked to save in Safari.
Okay.
All that I know of, unless Apple was secretly tracking me and they just like magically saved it. And I just don't know.
I mean, they didn't tell you guys last time, so.
I didn't get hacked last time, so hopefully I don't get hacked ever. Knock on wood. Make sure I don't get hacked.
So the next thing that they kind of talked on was things like positive framing and negative wording. So essentially, things that, again, nudge you towards making certain choices, and the way that different options are framed is an effective motivating factor. If you focus on the positive aspects of one choice and glossing over the potentially negative aspects of like choosing that framed positive one, essentially you're lying by omittance. Essentially, it's kind of like a bad relationship. It's like, it's actually kind of like what was that one remember that voice note that was inside our chat a few days ago by a particular person who was like, oh yeah, just don't tell them certain things and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's essentially what this is right here.
like you're not necessarily lying, but you're withholding the 100% truth.
Yes.
Like you're working your way around saying what you have to say.
Exactly. So it paints a particular kind of picture to say, hey, what's up? You want to click here. Yeah. Like, this is the thing you want to do. And then you do that, and then you don't know what the hell it is that you just did.
Yeah, until it's too late.
And they mentioned, you know, the whole Facebook recognition technology thing being stopped in Europe in 2012 because of the whole data issues. Hey, Pixel, welcome to the stream. And rather than what Facebook did, rather than addressing or attempting to alleviate the issue, Facebook focused on the positive sides of data sharing. So essentially, we're going to focus on why you should share your face with us instead of actually just dealing with the issue. So it's kind of like that you get into a fight with your significant other, they cheated, and then they were like, well, at least I didn't like go raw or something. I had them use a rubber. Positive aspects, right?
Yes.
They didn't kiss me, right?
No.
So that's essentially what they're doing. We're doing well. At least I'm doing well, Pixel. How about you, Vicky? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Tired, but
I think we're all kind of right up inside there, right up and now. I think you know what I already went through today, so.
No, I feel like I was missing from like the chat like all day, so I missed everything.
Ah, wow. Well, I guess after this, you have like a 5-minute like voice note to listen to, just to get an idea of what's been going on.
I shall.
Okay. So the next thing that really is worrying though is that Facebook, instead, pretty much what Google did with this whole following on the positive aspects of why you should share your data, it's not so great because face recognition is a form of biometrics. So it's the same thing as learning your voice or learning your fingerprint or learning your tongue print or reading your eyes to unlock your phones, like, or anything like that. It's a way to identify you as you. And that falls under a certain category of the GDPR, which, like we mentioned earlier, actually manages user privacy for the EU. So the fact that Google, instead of trying to fix it, is trying to gloss over it, it's kind of like, yeah, really? Like, didn't you guys screw up enough?
It's like when you, it's like when you have like when you kind of crack your screen, actually no, when you scratch your phone, but you put like a case over it so you hide it and it looks polished and brand new.
Yes.
And it still looks appealing to the eye.
Exactly. And then you try to sell it to someone.
Somebody, yep. With the case on, you don't ever take the case off.
Mm-hmm. So essentially what they did with the face recognition thing, and they actually have it here, and this is a quote directly from the Facebook page, that if you keep face recognition turned off, we won't be able to use this technology if a stranger uses your photo to impersonate you. If someone uses a screen reader, they won't be told when you're in a photo unless you're tagged. And essentially, that kind of comes off as a scary thing. Like, oh, well, if you turn this off, bad things will happen. So that's not really good, especially if you're going on the privacy element of things. Like, okay, just because I do this, I appreciate you telling me this, but like, do you need to make it this scary sounding? Like, maybe they could have done something like, hey, if you turn this off, we won't be able to really tell you if something. I guess they technically do that. See, this is where it becomes a little tricky, because if you want people to be able to know that you have this feature, but you also want them to know the consequences if you turn it off. So I'm not sure about this one. What do you think, Vicky?
I think I've seen that before, like where I went to turn off something and like gave me like a warning. But if they don't want me to turn it off, then they would word it in like a certain way where it would come off as though like it's kind of like one of those. I'm pretty sure everybody's seen this. Like, then pop up ads to be like warning, warning, yeah, like that. So they're probably gonna word it in a way where it comes off like it's kind of like jumping at you, like, hey, this is a warning, you shouldn't do this, blah blah blah, because they're trying to deter you from selecting the option that would benefit you, but they want you to use the option that would benefit them, so they want you to leave it on. If I'm making sense.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So I can see the reason why they worded that way. Kind of like a threat, but not directly.
Yeah.
It's like a softer threat, basically, like a softened threat.
Now they then go on to say that, even though apparently users were not fully informed of the full scope of everything, and they use selective uses of examples that pretty much got you to choose this particular option. And again, they're going through the whole click one thing instead of turning it on and off. You got to click here, then you got to read this and click there, and then it takes you to yet another screen to which either you allow it or don't allow it, instead of you just clicking accept and continue as before. So it make this example right here is almost like a trifecta of what you should not be doing. One, you're already making one button more presentable to the next, so you're trying to get people to click on it. Then the next thing is that when they click on the one to actually view it, well, not even just that. Instead of it having two options, yes or no, you then have to go into another step to then do it, and then another step past that. And then we get into what we just talked about, where they don't give the full piece of information so that people can make full choices.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Google does things a little pretty much the same way. So for example, they were talking about the receiving personalized ads, and we already showed about the Windows update with the whole icon kind of thing. And they say that all three companies presented the settings that maximize data collection as a positive option. Dark patterns such as skewed wording focus on positive, such as improve services, glossing over potential negative consequences, and not explaining the full extent of the choices, all serve to nudge users towards allowing wider data collection and use. So, yeah. So far, these companies aren't really doing so well. Windows, which is a little surprising, I'm surprised that they're like doing so well inside of this.
It's mainly Facebook and Google that's really killing. That's really like, how should I say this? Yeah, basically makes me Facebook and Google is really winning this one. Windows is like kind of mid-level, but Facebook and Google have like the high advantage.
Is it really an advantage though? Like, this is
probably because they're like, even though Windows is used the most, when persons log onto their Windows device, they automatically go to either go to Google Chrome, because like I feel most people use Google Chrome, and opposed to, from what I've heard, my personal experience, I've seen most people that use Google Chrome than the default browser that's on their device. So that's probably the reason why. So they automatically go to Google product, and then their search engine is Google. So I highly doubt. Like, I don't think most people use Bing. Well, from my experience, I'm gonna speak from my experience. I haven't seen much persons use Bing or Yahoo. A lot of people use Google, and there are a lot of people that go on Facebook. So this is probably why, like, as soon as they would log onto their Windows device, jump on Google, go on Facebook. So that's probably the reason why they're higher up in the ladder than Windows, because they're not really going on their Windows device like, oh, hey, I'm going to check out the Windows store, or hey, I'm going to use the default browser, which is Internet Edge. Yeah.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from with that, and I can agree with that. I can actually agree with that. So, and
I had to say Twitter isn't in the mix, just showing how Facebook is of the devil.
Vicky?
So that's what most people say. Facebook is of the devil.
They're saying it for a completely different set of reasons. It's because they get like exposed on Facebook.
Oh, I thought like they said it because like persons usually get hooked to like most of like, I don't know what it is, but Zuckerberg apps, like people just like automatically get sucked into them. It's happened with Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. Like you go on there for one thing and end up like doing multiple things. So I always thought that was the reason why people say that, Facebook is of the devil.
Okay, so that was kind of true, especially when it came to games on Facebook, which is, I think, kind of died out now.
I used to be there playing Cafe. It was Cafe something.
That and Farmville, and yeah.
Yes, I used to be in school. Gotta make sure my guacamole ain't burn up.
But
I'm glad I left that life behind me.
I would think it's between that and people getting exposed for doing shady stuff. That is the real reason why people said, Facebook is of the devil, because you can't really hide, and so you're always getting into trouble.
Interesting. This is why you don't post. This is why you don't post and put everything in your life on social media.
Exactly. I would reckon to say Twitter is probably more of the devil now, though, if you really take a look at the content.
Touche. But I don't post much of my stuff on Twitter. If I post on Twitter, it's usually something anime, TV, or movie related, or comic. So
this is true. Or tech.
Yes, or that too, and manga. Yeah. But other than that, like I rarely have photos of myself on Twitter.
And so then they come up to, and we're getting back into this now, rewards and punishment. And essentially, this is again that whole bidding thing to make you choose particular things instead of thinking about the long game. So let's say we're going to give you this feature here, and you're going to give us your privacy. It's essentially what it is. Or give you we're going to give you a discount, and you're going to give us like all your email information and all your contacts.
Especially if it's like a premium feature and you're on the basic account.
Yeah. Connect your contacts for a 5% discount. So it's things like that. And that's even part of like when you first sign up for, or when you log back into a Facebook account, it then asks like, do you want to sync your contacts?
Yes, especially on the Messenger app.
Yep. And so it's going to gather all of your contact information, all their email addresses, all their passwords. Well, not passwords, but phone numbers, any pictures that you have of them. It's going to try to grab as much information as possible.
And if you go from Facebook onto like WhatsApp, you're going to see them there. They're going to be, and then you go to Instagram, you're going to see them there as well. They may be in like the suggested who to follow.
Exactly. So that's that element of it. And then even when it comes to like your, here's an example. When it comes to Facebook's GDPR pop-up, users were presented with an apparent choice regarding the new user terms. Hidden above the big blue I accept button, the clickable text said see your options. And essentially, uh, you know, by tapping I accept, the so on and so forth, the see your options is almost hidden away as part of the text instead of just like having its own button. Um, so it kind of is like, well, I only have the choice to accept, so I may as well accept, or I can't move forward.
Yeah.
And then if you click that, then apparently it says if you don't accept these, you can't continue to use Facebook, you can delete your account, and we'll give you the option to download a copy of your information first. You can either close and then click I accept, or delete account. That's not so great. One saying, yes, we know that they are away, and yes, follow them when they're signed off on their accounts. Yeah. Yep. So, apparently Google does something a little similar. When it's being sent to the privacy dashboard, users were, among other things, told that they will lose the ability to block or mute ads. There was no explanation of what mute ads entails. It could be to turn off sound in ads, for example, in YouTube, or disable certain kinds of ads. And when it's not clear, some users could worry about choosing this option since the example, noisy ads in a work environment would be very problematic. Which is true when you really think about it. And now that I think about it, they never really give you an option to block or mute ads. Unless it's like, skip this ad. And that's not really blocking or muting them, is it? You're just skipping.
Yeah, skipping them.
So what are they talking about with blocking or muting? That
may be... Wait. On YouTube, can you mute the ad until it's finished playing? I usually just is like... Because I've gotten so accustomed to it, I usually just like listen to the tone and do a little wiggle. But but I don't remember. Can you mute them?
actually,
if you can,
I don't know.
if you can, then that may be what they're referring to. They give you the option to mute the ad until like I think this 5-second time frame is up, then you can skip it.
Maybe. I mean, again, I'm not the best judge of that because I don't actually get ads on YouTube.
Oh, you have it blocked?
Well, I have my ad blocker going, yes, but I also have the premium service, so I don't see ads by default.
Excuse me.
And apparently by contrast, Windows 10 update, which had its own issues of continuously appearing and being very persistent and annoying, users were presented with a choice between sending basic or full diagnostic data to Microsoft. Both options included a disclaimer that regardless of whether you choose either one, your device will be equally secure and operate normally. That's kind of telling customers, regardless of the thing, you don't have to worry. You're safe. You can still use it. Like, this is good guy Microsoft right now, essentially.
Now that I think about it, I always just click share on my. So when you update your Mac OS,
and your iPhone,
iOS 2 and tvOS, like you have the option to like share your diagnosis
with the developers. Notice it doesn't really say Apple. It says the developers.
Yeah,
meaning,
and it's always in bold text and like the little subtext is usually small, but I never read it. I always see the bold text and be like, this is probably gonna help the app, and they may help it to like improve, do better. So I just automatically click yes, sure.
Exactly, and see that's nudging as well. Like, I don't know if you realize that. Hey, William, welcome to the stream.
William Carroll.
But yeah, that's essentially another version of it right there as well. Like, so essentially, yeah, Apple's doing the same kind of shady stuff too,
They
just
just have
not
it
as
in a
much.
nicer layout,
Yep.
a nice simplistic layout that you never really pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Let me just open this up really quick.
I didn't notice it until now.
That's how they trick you. That's how they get tricky with it. Okay, watch that. Okay. You left out the Apple things till the end. Well, we're still not done with Apple just yet. More than likely, we probably will find some other stuff here and there.
Yeah, also there might be something else that I may tag.
Mm-hmm. So, then we have the next option, which is forced action and timing. So this is that whole 15 minutes to call in kind of thing coming up into effect again, where consumers often using digital services on their phone while on the go, forcing users to join between actions on the spot is a particularly strong nudge because then they don't want to miss out. And this is where the whole thing that Google's recently been talking about, FOMO, fear of missing out, and a lot of other tech companies are starting to do it, especially when it comes to digital wellness. Fear of missing out is a big thing. So when you are faced with a option of FOMO, yeah, that's not a really good place where you want to put your people. It's great for marketers because then it puts them in that place and makes them want to probably click on your stuff. But for a consumer, it's not so great.
So it's kind of like, let's say you're on a train and you're already doing something, and it makes you stop and you need to get off the train. Like you're not focusing on what you're doing, just gonna click OK.
Yep.
Yeah, like they may have the option to be like, oh, you can download the privacy disclaimer to like read later, but you won't even see that option because you're just automatically gonna click OK because something's happening in front of you and you wasn't paying attention because you're on your phone.
Yep. So here's actually a pretty good example. With Facebook and the GDPR pop-up, you had two options: get started or click X. And if you clicked X, then it then comes up with another pop-up that says you need to finish reviewing these settings to continue using Facebook. This gives an impression that the user will be blocked from using Facebook until the settings have been reviewed. And that turned out to be false. So you could have actually just continued using Facebook. You didn't actually have to go through this. And that's the forced action, or the illusion of forced actions. That's not so great either.
It's usually annoying. Like if you're scrolling on Facebook and you're already looking at something and like this pop-up comes in your face and like, oh, you gotta do this, blah, blah, blah. You're just like trying to hurry up, get back to finish like what you're looking at, so you're just gonna automatically click what they want you to click.
Exactly.
I'm now noticing all these things. I never paid attention to them before. I just always used to click OK.
Yeah, it's these things that we just, because we're so like, blah, this is a lot of reading, and we don't like to read. Yeah, exactly.
One of my coworkers calls it the microwave generation. The one calls it the popcorn generation. I have no clue which one it is, but I get the gist of where they're coming from.
I think it's the microwave generation.
We're really, I hope the one's listening.
She's probably not. She's probably napping, but
probably. Like we just want things right then and there. Like we don't want to wait.
So on the desktop version of the app, Facebook essentially though, according to the information available, not to be circumvented without going through the process, red dots signifying message notifications were the only part of the regular Facebook interface that was visible during the process, meaning that you could have only really seen your messages, or that you had messages, and so it made you feel like, I need to get to those messages, so I need to go through this. which places pressure on you to want to get through it quickly and give up your privacy. So they're saying that if this was deliberate, it's a very clear example of using dark patterns to manipulate users yet again.
Yes, especially like, I haven't set up a Facebook account in a while, but I know with certain accounts, like when you set them up, like they automatically send you like a little inbox to be like, hey, XYZ, that is the case. Like that's an example there where like you could see the bubble, but it's not really something important, but you think it's important, so you're just gonna rush through it.
Exactly. And I'm showing you an example of it. It quite literally, it doesn't even say like it has numbers to say like how many chats or notifications you have. It just has a big red circle on both of them to make you feel like, there's stuff there. So that's
tricky Facebook.
Yeah, essentially. Facebook does other things as well. So for example, with their GDPR pop-up, it also stated that the user must review the settings before continuing the service, and users had to scroll through a short summary of Google's privacy policy, and according to the text, reviewing the pop-up seems to be a prerequisite for continued use of Google's services. So they quite literally say, we'll need you to do this in order to continue using Google services, which is not as bad as Facebook, but still kind of bad that you have to like agree to this before you can do anything else. But then again, it does make sense. Like they're just trying to protect themselves from like the GDPR fine, which is an absorbent amount. I think it's like it's either $10,000 or $10 million per fine. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's 10 something, and it's not 1000. Now, they also give the illusion of control. So these pop-ups, for example, and the privacy dashboard for both Facebook and Google say that they give us a bunch of control over our data. So for example, they're saying that studies that have indicated that people who have gotten these things are more susceptible to take more risks when disclosing sensitive information. And this creates for the main reason because they think they have control over this stuff, they're willing to give more control away, essentially. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
makes sense.
This creates a paradox because you don't have as much control as you have, for starters, and then you're giving away control because you think you have it. And so it's both of them clashing against one another for a unreasonable end, essentially.
Yep.
And quite literally, Google My Account splash page says you're in control. You can easily delete specific items or entire topics. You can also change your settings and decide what data gets associated with your account. And while this is true for a lot of stuff, this isn't all of your information that Google has on you. Like, this is only certain things like your search, anything that you're doing with voice notations, or like what you're saying to Google or whatever it is to then type out for you. Anything with the apps that you're opening, the sites the searches that you're searching for, essentially anything like that, it allows you to delete or search through or whatnot. But say other things like what's actually being taken away from particular apps, what kind of things you're really clicking on inside those apps, what kind of things you're clicking on the websites, which Google is storing via analytic codes and stuff like that. They're not talking about that at all, even though technically that's still pertaining to you. Facebook, for example, is like, you control whether we use data from partners to show you ads, but they're still going to show you ads regardless. It is clear that it's not a question of controlling data collection, but it's a setting about which ads you'll see. Google does the whole thing that I just talked about, easily deleting specific items or entire topics, but they essentially tested it about the ease of deleting specific items or entire topics. They attempted to delete all location data from a dummy Google account, and 2 personal accounts. The user test was performed by clicking through the privacy dashboard, so on and so forth. They used a desktop, and the settings essentially are spread throughout many different pages. In the test, both initial testers ended up going through between 30 and 40 different links in an attempt to locate delete all location option. That is insane. Like, just to turn this thing off? I don't know.
A lot. I get tired of like 2 links.
Yeah.
So I know between 30 and 40, that's a lot.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's not really that great. After that, they pretty much just have to say that, by giving users an overwhelming amount of granular choices to micromanage, Google has designed a privacy dashboard that, according to their analysis, actually discourages users from changing or taking control of settings or deleting bulks of data. Simultaneously, as noted, the presence and claims of complete user control may be incentivize users to share more personal data. And have you ever heard of these places that will then say, oh, well, you can always take your data along with you whenever you want to go somewhere?
Yep.
You're essentially just downloading it. You're not able to really manage it per se. Like, it's just a bunch of raw data. It's hundreds of pages of raw data they have on you. So you're not really taking your stuff. It's not like it's a set of papers that's on a table and you're just taking it. They still have their copy. You're just downloading their copy. You're essentially copying your information, not taking it with you. And here is a flowchart example of Facebook. So this is really bad. Required, review your data settings. You can leave without reviewing, or you need to finish reviewing these to continue use. And if you decide no, you leave Facebook, or you click Get Started. We show you better ads by using your data from advertisers, app developers, and publishers. You can either accept that, or say, let's manage it. Then you want to turn off ads based on data from partners, continue. Then you control whether we use data from partners to show ads. You don't allow, then you got to click save. Your choice has been saved. Then it takes you back, and then you have to go back, and then you have to close, and then you click accept and continue. So it's things like that that just make it really difficult for people to actually manage their stuff just from the basic stuff. Google's a little better, as an example, where it just takes everything and shoves it off, which I think is probably one of the better ways. But the fact that it isn't all on one page for you to choose from is pretty bad. I think what they probably should do, and Vicky, you can tell me if you agree with me or not on this, is give the options and then have a button there that says learn more. That takes you to another page and gives you more information about your choice.
Yeah, so it'd be better instead of I'm just like taking everything and sweeping it to the side.
Exactly.
Kind of like that pushing underneath a rug. They hope that you don't like have like a piece of paper is like sticking out. They're hoping that you don't happen to like go underneath the rug to see what that paper is.
Exactly. And Windows 10 is almost completely straightforward with their stuff, so yeah.
No one uses that default. No one uses that default setting. So all default programs. No, not much people, I should say.
No, most don't. So overall, and I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that this report hasn't really come up almost anywhere. Like, there's only like a very few select places where I found this information about this report. It hasn't really touched any mainstream media, which is surprising, especially since, Facebook is mentioned, and they're all after Facebook.
They could have paid them off.
There's that.
The power of money.
But yeah, like one of the reasons why we really wanted to touch on this topic is because it wasn't really talked about anywhere. And the people that actually, like, even the articles that I saw didn't really get into detail with it. So for example, I saw one on TechCrunch, and I'll show that just right now, that pretty much goes over it. And very, very briefly, it's probably like 10 paragraphs, if that. The actual website that it was shared to, and actually that did it, I should say, just gives you like this really quick video as well. So I'll play that.
While not scrolling, you agreed to watch this video. We're discussing news about how leading tech companies manipulate their users.
Facebook and Google makes us share personal information with cunning design, confusing interfaces, and take it or leave it options. Knowledge of what we like, where we are, who our friends are, our political conviction, our sexual preferences are all being tracked, and it makes out the core of the business model of these companies. This data can be used to manipulate you or target ads at you when you are at your most vulnerable. Facebook and Google are acting in an unethical manner, contrary to new data protection laws. The default settings should be the least intrusive to our privacy, and we should be in control over how our information is shared and how it's being used. In our opinion, Facebook and Google are far from complying with the rules and do not provide us with meaningful choices.
Yeah. So essentially that's it in a nutshell. They give some basic information about sharing by default, and they kind of just leave it at that. So even the site that made it doesn't get into full detail about it, which is kind of weird when you really think about it.
Yes.
So
I still could get them off. Something happened behind the scenes that we don't know about, the reason why it never surfaced.
maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same point, it seems like a Dutch website. And most of the tech blogs and stuff like that don't really look at that side of the world all that much. They hear GDPR and whatnot, but do they do enough research to find something like this? I don't know. But that's a little disappointing if that was the case. I'm hoping it's bad that I'm hoping that it's more that they were paid off. Wow, I just realized, I just caught myself with that. But you've seen this one. Okay. I'm guessing you've seen the video, or at least the article. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. But anyway, yeah, Vicky. So, final thoughts on this?
Let's see. What can I tell the crowd? I guess my final thoughts would just be like, before you guys just go being a part of microwave generation, just clicking things, maybe you should read and go check your Facebook and Google settings after you're finished listening / watching the show.
I will say that I was actually surprised at the amount of stuff that was hidden away. And this actually caused me to go through a lot of my settings on a bunch of different things to try to find out like what all was changed and whatnot, or what have I been missing, or what was turned on by default that should have probably have been turned on. And I found quite a few things, which so I would suggest you do that, especially if you were one of those persons, like Vicky said, that just clicked on stuff instead of reading through. I thought I did a due diligence. Apparently I did not. So
Actually thought that Google was looking out for you, but in actuality they were looking out for themselves.
Oh, we already know we're the product. That's for everything. Just like how you guys are the product for Apple stuff as well. That's they use the fanaticism of you guys to sell more stuff. They says, we have so many people there, they're in love with it. Why aren't you in love with it?
Yep. And everybody, let me say that. Apple products has just hit that standpoint, whereas you have to have one in the world. Like people look at you differently if you don't have an Apple product. And it has to be the cream of the crop, the premium product. If it's not the premium company, like, oh, okay, this is a basic Apple product.
Yeah. I'll admit though, like I've had people ask me if my phone's an iPhone just because it kind of looks like it, and then the look on their faces when I say no, it's an Android. It's like
Disappointment. Yeah. The world we live in.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd like to thank everyone that decided to jump into the chat and actually like be a part of the episode, as well as all the followers and subscribers that we had. We actually had a few this time. We had like 5. And I'd like to thank my co-host Vicquell for coming on to today's show.
You're welcome.
And taking the time to read through this 40-page report. Which we then went over today. Which took a lot longer than I thought it would have originally. So yeah, until next time, which is going to be next week Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or if you're watching this or listening to the podcast, then you can jump into Twitch stream, Mob Crush, Mixer, Periscope, Facebook, or listen to us on your favorite podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Pretty much anywhere you listen to your podcast, we're probably there. Until next time, it's Michael Amargon. Take care.